Today I want to talk about James M. McGill's journey from slipping Jimmy to Saul Goodman. This journey of his has taken 6 seasons and is nearly over. And it may actually be over after episode 4 of the season, Hit and Run. I did say that Jimmy took his final step to becoming Saul Goodman. When I say James M. McGill's steps from Jimmy to Saul, I'm referring to choices that Jimmy makes. And so I want to talk about those 8 choices that we have seen so far throughout this series. I'm G, and this is the G-Spot. The very first step happens in Cook County Jail in Cicero, Illinois, where Jimmy has been arrested and part of his charges are sex offender charges. Jimmy is desperate for help and reaches out to Chuck. Jimmy hasn't talked to Chuck in about 5 years. And when Chuck shows up, he is in no mood for slipping Jimmy. What we eventually see, Chuck wants Jimmy to go to Chuck Jail. Chuck Jail basically consists of Jimmy moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico with Chuck and taking a job in the mailroom at HHM. Jimmy decides that he will do this. We see him a few episodes later in another flashback walk into the bar and let Marco know that he's leaving and going with Chuck. He says to Marco, it's time for him to grow up. Essentially, what Jimmy's saying at that point is he's leaving, slipping Jimmy behind. And so that is Jimmy's first choice. He chooses to go to Chuck Jail, which is working in HHM's mailroom. We should point out that this made Chuck very happy because a mailroom is exactly where Chuck thinks Jimmy belongs. And the only way Jimmy's gonna keep Chuck happy is if he stays in that mailroom. This choice that Jimmy makes to go work in the HHM mailroom leads to a significant event in Jimmy's life. And that is that Jimmy meets Kim Wexler in the mailroom at HHM. Kim Wexler steals Jimmy's heart. In the 6th episode of the 4th season opens with another flashback. It's 1992, Jimmy's in the mailroom, still in the mailroom at HHM, and he's running an Oscar pool. At this point, we see Jimmy meet up with Kim. Kim is assisting Jimmy with the Oscar pool. It's something that they're doing together, but Kim has a lot more going on in her life than Jimmy at this point because Kim is involved, Kim is going to law school at this point. It's during this conversation between Jimmy and Kim when Chuck enters to a huge round of applause. Kim, like everybody else that there at HHM at the time, is really enamored by Chuck, specifically because of a case that he just won by using some obscure piece of law. We see Kim try to explain to Jimmy what Chuck did, but it all kind of goes over Jimmy's head, or he doesn't really even care, to be honest. It's, either way. And then Chuck comes over and we see Kim cannot hide her admiration for Chuck when he comes over. She starts questioning him about the case he won and suggesting perhaps a different way he could have won it. Chuck is impressed by what Kim says. Jimmy is basically left out of the conversation because he doesn't understand any of it. He makes some comment about butts on platters. Chuck basically makes fun of Jimmy. Jimmy's not even sure who the plaintiff and the defendant are in the case. Jimmy really has a bad moment, a bad time at this moment because he is faced with this reality that people are moving on beyond him, that he is not part of the lawyer club. Jimmy was never interested in being in the lawyer club when it was just Chuck and maybe Howard that was there, let's say. But now that Kim is ready to join the club of lawyers, it causes Jimmy to feel really left out. And this is when Jimmy walks into the law library at HHM. It is at this point that Jimmy makes the decision to go to law school himself and become a lawyer so that he can be part of the club. The third choice that Jimmy makes on his road to becoming Saul Goodman may actually be the most significant choice of all of them, because it's a choice where the consequences of his choice just never stop. And that choice is to slipping Jimmy the Kettlemans. Jimmy wants to land the Kettlemans as a big account so he can start making some money, and they go to HHM instead. And he decides that he's going to get these Kettlemans as clients by reverting back to his slipping Jimmy ways. But everything goes wrong for Jimmy. Jimmy ends up running into Tuco. They end up in the desert. Jimmy has to do everything he can to save these skateboarders, and he uses his verbal abilities, his mouth, to talk Tuco out of killing the skateboarders. He gets them out with broken legs. He seems to have post-traumatic stress from everything that he did see in the desert with Tuco breaking the skateboarder's legs. He really wants to put this slipping Jimmy move behind him, but what happens is Nacho shows up in his office. Nacho cued in to Jimmy talking about people with a lot of cash lying around that they stole. And Nacho likes stealing from criminals because they can't report them. So Nacho wants to steal from the Kettlemans, but Jimmy does not want the Kettlemans in danger. He tries to warn the Kettlemans, they end up running away. This puts Nacho in trouble, and Nacho ends up arrested because his van was outside the Kettlemans, so he's suspected. And it also puts Kim in trouble because the Kettlemans are her clients and they ran away. Everybody needs the Kettlemans back, and the end result of all of this is Jimmy takes a bribe from the Kettlemans. This bribe leads Jimmy down a road that he could have possibly actually built a legitimate career from. This leads to another big event in Jimmy's life. Jimmy stumbles upon the Sandpiper lawsuit, and this is huge. This is something that is really perfect for James M. McGill. It has a big payoff to it, which is what his slipping Jimmy side is always looking for, a big payoff. But it's all legal, which is what James M. McGill wants. On top of that, it has also got him back into this idea of Jimmy being part of the HHM club, which is what he's really wanted from the start of him going to law school. But then this all leads to a really devastating blow to Jimmy and his fourth choice on the road to becoming Saul Goodman. In the last episode of the first season, Jimmy sort of has a meltdown while he's calling bingo. At one point, he pulls a B and he says B for betrayal, B for brother. He feels absolutely betrayed by Chuck, and he starts regretting his decision to come to Albuquerque with Chuck. Why did I come here? It's a big moment of truth and regret for Jimmy, and he ends up taking off and heading back to Cicero. He meets up with Marco. But the end of this trip is a little sad because Marco passes away. Jimmy has to say goodbye to Marco. He basically has to say goodbye to the old slipping Jimmy. Those days are gone. They're far in the past. Jimmy was able to get, a little taste of that past life that he lived with Marco, but that was nothing that was ever going to be sustainable. Jimmy takes Marco's ring as a memento, and we see this is where Saul Goodman's pinky ring comes from. And this ring symbolizes a lot for Jimmy. It basically symbolizes slipping Jimmy. And Jimmy's choice to wear this ring all the time is a symbol that he is not leaving slipping Jimmy behind, like Chuck told him he had to when Chuck got him out of Cook County Jail and took him to Albuquerque. Jimmy has decided he is going to re-embrace slipping Jimmy, because whether he's slipping Jimmy or he's not slipping Jimmy, Chuck is never going to approve of him. Chuck is always going to treat him like slipping Jimmy, no matter what he does. Chuck is never gonna let Jimmy in the club. So why should he try to impress Chuck in the first place. And this is the big decision that Jimmy makes at the end of the first season, to re-embrace slipping Jimmy and not be concerned about what Chuck thinks about him. And Jimmy walks away from the law. He's done being a lawyer. The whole point of him going to law school was to get into the HHM club. So Jimmy walks away from the law, but this is very short-lived. It's a very short time period, but what is significant that happens in the time period that Jimmy walks away from the law, after he has re-embraced the slipping Jimmy side of him, is Jimmy introduces Kim to slipping Jimmy. They run their first scam together. The scam goes over great, and after Jim and Kimmy become physical for the very first time. So this is a big turning point in Kim and Jimmy's relationship. Jimmy introduced Kim to slipping Jimmy, and Kim really liked it. It's during this time that Kim manages to get Mesa Verde to stick with Kim, even though Kim is leaving HHM, which means HHM would lose Mesa Verde a very big account. This is when Chuck steps in. And Chuck steps in not just because he doesn't want to lose Mesa Verde, but Chuck also steps in because he does not want Kim succeeding simply because Kim chose to be a partner with Jimmy. Chuck is really petty in this moment. Chuck is successful in stealing Mesa Verde back, and this leads to Jimmy's fifth choice on his road to Saul Goodman. Jimmy decides to slipping Jimmy Chuck a brother's betrayal. Jimmy changes 1261 to 1216. The whole thing blows up for Chuck, and Mesa Verde ends up going back to Kim. This leads to a huge fallout for Jimmy, mainly because right from the get-go, Chuck knows everything that Jimmy did. Chuck figures it all out. It really doesn't even take him long. And Chuck is not going to let Jimmy get away with it. As far as Chuck's concerned, he finally has a way from stopping Jimmy from being a lawyer, which has been part of Chuck's desires from the minute that Jimmy actually became a lawyer. As we said in the beginning, Chuck liked Jimmy in the mailroom and he wanted him to stay there. So Chuck figures out everything that Jimmy did. Chuck gets Jimmy to confess to what he did, and then Chuck uses his evidence and knowledge to get Jimmy disbarred. To sell cell phones to criminals under the name of Saul Goodman. And it seems like the least significant choice out of all the choices we're going to go through, but it really is important because it establishes Jimmy's relationship to helping criminals, and not helping them in a legal stand-up way, helping criminals continue their criminal activity. And it also brings the name Saul Goodman into his life. But this leads to a significant event for both Jimmy and Kim. What it leads to is the Hugh Babineau affair. This leads to Kim crossing some lines that she has not crossed before. Kim has run some scams with Jimmy in the past. This is the first scam that Kim and Jimmy run in the legal system. And this entire scam is basically Kim's idea. It's after this that Jimmy decides he is going to practice law under the name Saul Goodman. It's all very shocking to Kim. She doesn't really understand it. Jimmy's justification is that he wants to continue to help criminals, and all the criminals know him under the name of Saul Goodman. This is his way of being able to have a clientele in place as soon as he goes back to practicing law. Jimmy makes the decision that he's going to represent Lalo in JMM. You know, Lalo says to him, just make money. He knows it's a bad idea. Him and Kim talk about what a bad idea it is. But at first, Jimmy's whole justification is, I'm never gonna be able to get this guy off. So what's it matter? I'll do what he's asking me to do. He's gonna go to jail and I'll be done with it. But then Mike shows up at Jimmy's with everything he needs to get Lalo off. So we see Jimmy in court. It's when Fred's family is there. Jimmy is looking at Fred's family while talking to Lalo. Lalo could care less about anything that he did or anybody that was affected by it. It's kind of harsh the way he doesn't even know who the family is. And when Jimmy says Fred, Lalo still doesn't know who he's talking about. But Jimmy's having a really hard time. He's looking at Fred's mother, his family, and he is struggling with the idea that they are not going to get justice and that he is actually going to get the guy who did this to their family, to Fred, off. So we see what happens in the courtroom is Jimmy gets stuck. He can't follow through with it. So Saul ends up standing up in court. This moment is one of the greatest moments in cinema that I have ever seen. The way that they express that Saul has taken over for Jimmy with no words, with only images, is really brilliant, 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 and very impressive. The second time that we see Saul take over for Jimmy is when Jimmy and Mike are in the desert. Getting out of the desert is just too much for Jimmy to handle. Not only getting out of the desert, but everything that he witnessed, all the death and violence that he witnessed in the desert. It was not Jimmy who got out of the desert, it was Saul who got out of the desert. But it was Saul acting as Jimmy. And we see Saul acting as Jimmy for several episodes after that. I will do another video on Saul acting as Jimmy and Jimmy acting as Saul, because it really is a significant part of Jimmy's journey. But anyways, I kind of feel safe in saying that this 8th step was Jimmy's last step into becoming Saul, but we'll see if there's another choice he has to make. What we saw in the 4th episode of the 6th season, Hit and Run, and that was we saw Jimmy embrace being known as a criminal lawyer. When Jimmy goes into the courthouse that episode, he finds everybody's giving him the cold shoulder. Jimmy eventually confronts Bill about this, and Bill lets him know, you scammed a judge, man. Like, Jimmy crossed a line that people just can't deal with. But Jimmy doesn't really care what any of them think. His attitude towards Bill, it's not, I'm sorry. He doesn't try to explain his actions. He doesn't say, I didn't know what to do. I was afraid of the cartel. I had to do what the guy wanted. Jimmy just says, prove it. He really does not care what any of them think. Then later we see Jimmy at the nail salon with a huge crowd of criminals looking for representation. And again, Jimmy embraces this. He knows that they're criminals. He knows that they're there because of his reputation of getting Lalo out on bail. And he completely embraces this. He is ready to give more people the same type of representation that he gave to Lalo. Jimmy has fully embraced the idea of being a criminal lawyer. And that is the essence of Saul Goodman. So it has been 6 amazing seasons. I want to say long because I never imagined they would take so long to get to Saul. But I don't want to say long because it was a great journey. It really fits into this idea of a Breaking Bad universe. We watched James M. McGill essentially break bad throughout this series. And those were the 8 steps that James M. McGill went through in Breaking Bad, and going from slipping Jimmy to Saul Goodman, criminal lawyer. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do look out for more videos before we get into the 8th episode in July. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.